Okay, we're live. Yeah, hit that thumbs
Hey,
up. Oh, Dave is joining. Well, let's see what happens with Dave coming on. We were just talking about Mallorca. I'm pretty sure I've got. Look at that handsome fella. No
Hey,
speedos. I'm pretty sure I've got some clients out there, and they've got some great deployments. But I'll have to check my geography. So
yeah, not near me.
no. All right. Well, let's kick it off with what we don't know. Dave, tell us about what happened with the network.
Wow, it's still fluctuating. I think that's the word we use, isn't it? It's still fluctuating. There is some evidence that things are getting a little bit better. That the numbers are up, but they're not anywhere like where they need to be or where people want them to be.
Right.
So I've had a look over the last week. Things are steadily improving. Last week we had a couple of days where there were less than 40,000 HNT minted.
Okay.
The last couple of days it's been 53, 54,000, so significantly more, obviously to compensate. So I had a massive spike in my earnings on Saturday. I thought I'd won the lottery. It was double what it was for the last 2 weeks, but it's dropped back again today. What we are seeing is still a relatively small number of hotspots beaconing. So we were around 196,000, I think, yesterday. Which again, it's slowly creeping upwards, but it's not where we want it to be. I think we're probably around the limit that we're going to get if we leave the POC rate at 200 per block. It works out something like 250,000 beacons if we leave it like that, and we're getting sort of 190,000 hotspots beaconing. Some of them maybe twice. So yeah, we're reaching that limit. I think the team last week were dealing with a memory leak in the software, so they're looking at trying to fix that before I think they update the POC rate to where everybody will be a little bit happier with their earnings. I did an interesting study last week. Just at the end of last week, before I came away, I looked at 7 days prior to Saturday, and then 7 days prior to light hotspots, just to see the actual numbers of hotspots that are beaconing and witnessing. And it came as a little bit of a surprise to find that the numbers are almost identical. So pre-light hotspots and post-light hotspots in that 7 day period, the same amount of hotspots are participating. Obviously, that's no indication of how frequently they're participating, but they are participating.
Hmm. What is there? Is there kind of a takeaway from that you're getting, or you're just like, oh, it's kind of an odd thing to of note?
I think what it suggests is that all the hotspots that were earning prior to light hotspots are pretty much earning now.
Okay.
There will be some that have been resurrected that weren't earning before, and there will be some that were earning before and aren't earning now. But the numbers are broadly identical, within sort of a couple of thousand of one another, which I found a bit startling.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
So
all the people that are moaning that they've had zero rewards for 20 days, that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
right on. Well, Thunder Road in the comments just wants his miners back online. Mine have been up the whole time, but I've got all DIY, so I feel like it's. I mean, my rack has gone down, and but it always goes down and comes back up. What are you
it's a bit
guys seeing
hit
on your
and miss
miners?
for me.
Is it? Yeah.
Hit and miss for me, totally. Yeah, some are back, some aren't. Some will come back for a day, and some won't, or just
Yeah.
a mix in between. I didn't quite realise that how low the rate was compared to what we'd need to be have one beacon a day each. Like we need to get to 700 mark just to hit one a day. So we're
Yeah.
not everyone is going to beacon every day right now. So unless that pot rate
Mm.
changes, it's going to be more like 2.5 days, 3 days between a beacon. So
Yeah.
it can really feel like it's dead for a
Right, but
while.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
we we
go ahead.
we're used to sort of 6 months ago, 3 or 4 beacons a day. If we need to get to that sort of number, you're looking at sort of a couple of thousand in the pop rate, which seems a long way off at the moment. But on the flip side of that, we don't need it. We don't need a super high pop rate to prove rewards, to prove coverage.
Right, and that's because there are so many hotspots. Is that what you're saying? or just you don't
Yeah,
need
well,
one in
how
general?
often? How often do you need to prove that there's a hotspot near you? Is one a day enough? One every 2 days? Probably. Things aren't changing that often.
Right.
It was nice to see more beacons, because more beacons, obviously, the frequency is a lot lower, or a lot higher rather, so you can actually see that something's happening. At the moment, you have to wait for 4 days and go, oh yeah, it's working. So it was nice to have a more frequent beaconing and witnessing, just because it gives you some confidence that something's happening, but it isn't strictly necessary for proof of coverage.
Right. I mean, you could make an
Yeah,
argument that you have. Go ahead.
I'm of the camp that unless a hotspot beacons a couple of times a day, it feels dead. You know, I
Yeah.
would love to see the pop rate go up there, but it's just never going to happen. Like there's
Mm.
talk about moving POC off chain like data, and that would mean we could get up to these rates of like 4 times a day. And then we could do crazy things like accept every witness, no max limit
Yeah.
on 14, just pay everyone for everything they hear, but it would need to be moved off chain, and that's like you're talking months and months of development before we're at that point.
And that
Yeah,
shouldn't
I think
change
that's
the kind of earnings you get anyway, because it's still the same amount of HNT being released.
Exactly.
So it'll just
Right.
be more frequent, smaller.
Yeah.
Right on.
The impact, I mean, of all of this is the size of the blocks. And currently we have very big blocks that take a lot of time to proceed sometimes. And I think that the problem is if we have more POC, or if we remove the limit of 18, the computation of the reward with 1 million soon hotspot is really complex and makes really, really big blocks and can create the slow we see. I mean, I don't know if you see that, but the reward blocks, they are usually something like, I think it's 20 or 50 times the computation of a standard blocks. And it makes it really complex, and it impacts the ETL, it impacts the router, it impacts many things.
Got it. Keenan, what do you got? Because I got two things. I want to know what's going on before you go to Tim Hortons, and I got Dennis coming on, but we got a 5 guest limit on this thing, so I'm going to boot you off pretty soon. But I want to hear what's going on in your world first.
Yeah, so I apologize. I haven't been on very much since like 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I have moved over to a position at Foundation. So
that's right. Congratulations.
Congrats.
Thank you. I'm a lot busier on Mondays now, so I apologize for that. But yeah, so I've been watching very closely what's been happening with the network the last little while as well. And yeah, we're starting to see some improvements. The Discord is less turbulent, I guess you could say, over the last few days. It's starting to come back. And just going back to what you were saying about beaconing, I agree, Neil, that like seeing multiple beacons a day, it's kind of proving that your hotspot's not dead. I think that's a big thing going on right now is my hotspot's dead, and then 3 days later it beacons and everyone's like, oh, it's fine. And then we have that cycle again. I'd personally like to see that as well, though I understand that really the hotspot shouldn't be moving. So, I mean, 1 beacon a day technically does make sense. But I get where you're coming from. So we're still seeing that a lot on the Discord, a lot of complaints about flat lines and lack of activity. But what I'm also seeing is those same people come back a day or two later and they're like, oh, it beaconed, it's working again. But then they come back again a couple of days later saying it's flatline. So we're seeing that cycle. But improvements are coming. Bear in mind it's a long weekend. Devs are tired. They'll be back.
Why are the devs tired?
They're still working.
That's so weird.
Who knows, right?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anyways, yes, I just wanted to say hi and apologize for not being here for the last few ones. But I'm going to go get my Tim Hortons coffee and some Timbits, and I'll watch you guys from the sidelines.
Ripping. Thanks,
Awesome.
Buddy. Talk to you guys soon.
Leets.
See ya.
We should have Dennis coming on. He's the professional /Elmo storm chaser on Discord, and he's way into the 5G and sensor stuff. So excited to see kind of that next step, which is a reasonable transition maybe to this whole HIP 51 and 53 thing. I'll reveal my ignorance on this, is that I figure if James File is voting for it, I'm going to vote for it as well, because he's really invested in the network. He seems super smart, and that just saves me a ton of research time. But I also know in the Crystal Crew channel that people were saying, hey, this is going to destroy POC earnings and it's going to be a huge problem. So I'm curious to hear what you guys have to. So I have more than one data point to make a decision on.
Yeah,
it's a bit of both, really. I think it's a bit of both. I personally think, it depends on your viewpoint as well, because as Europeans, we can't take part in this. So you're just asking for the US market to be able to earn more while we earn less.
Yep.
But then there's also things like any hotspot host can get the 5G mapper and go out and earn mobile for verifying coverage, and we just can't take part in that.
Right.
So the plus side is all of these mappers and things are going to work over LoRa, so they will increase LoRa usage.
Yep.
But it's just a market that takes a lot of it over to 5G that doesn't feel very fair from a European standpoint at the moment. But I voted for it because I understand that if we can become the chain of data transfer for many protocols, that is a crazy thing, and that will lead to more value being brought into this network.
Yeah, it's a long term vision, isn't it? Rather than looking at the short term, that perhaps we will be not favoured, but yeah, longer term, I think it can only be a good thing that the network continues to develop and grow.
Totally, and I always say it. IoT just takes a few years to really roll out, but there's no reason why it can't be pumping data just as much. 5G is not going to be a quick thing, and to get the carriers on board, and then to have everyone to have coverage in their area, as well as have phones that are supported by it, it's going to take a while to grow. So people seem to think it's urgent, but you just got to think about this on the longer scales. Like my favorite thing about HIPs and when people are thinking about it and getting their statistics from is validators. When we first talked about validators, we set a limit of 10,000 HNT, which was roughly at the time like $25,000, $30,000, which seemed like a reasonable input, but we weren't thinking long term enough. So now when you go to get a validator, it's $120,000. It was never meant to be that much. It was just we weren't thinking long enough. So I think it's important when people read these HIPs, they might think, oh, there's a real initial down point, but the more DC we burn, the better our value is. So you've just got to think longer term.
Yeah, that's important. Paul, what and Joey, I'm gonna ask you about it because I know you came on to probably talk about it. What if you don't mind, where do you kind of sit on this thing? The same place as Neil? Is that the 5G doesn't affect you, so it's...
Yeah, I mean, in France, for example, using the 5G frequency that is used for Helium is not authorized. You need to have a specific request to a central administration. So basically, you have no chance to get anything just for you.
Yep.
So it's quite limiting. What I'm expecting for the future is that there is some bands that are open bands, like the 800 megahertz so we use for LoRa. So there are some, I'm not sure, it's around 3 gigs, something like this, that could be used for such implementation. And we could expect that future of Helium 5G goes to their band. And so that way it could be open for everyone. The other thing we could expect eventually is, it's not the first time that a startup arrive in Europe and change the rules because it's globally deployed everywhere else, and so law change due to that. So we could also expect that the regulation change thanks to a big Helium push if it's going really, really big. But it's kind of dream. What is a bit more complex with frequencies is that if the frequency is not free, it's because it's already used by someone else. So that's a kind of blocking. So I'm curious on how it's gonna evolve. For sure, we can be part of the game right now, and some way it could be interesting to see how European guys can invest on 5G in North America or other country where it works, to be part of the game, even if we cannot deploy the hardware there. So both sides, it's a good question. What I'm expecting from 5G is that it can create a new boom for Helium as it's something really more popular. Not a lot of people know what is LoRa. even when they are deploying it on Helium. And but everyone know what is 4G, 5G, and anyone can use it on its smartphone. So we have an already really big ecosystem, and maybe it can be really larger thanks to this technology. So I'm really curious of seeing this and what's going to happen. Could be interesting in the token value, for example. I hope so, but we're gonna see. And to be more discussing about the hype, the HIP. It's more like 5G. It's really allowing to have any other protocol running over the Helium blockchain with dedicated tokens and the ability to exchange all these tokens based on HNT conversion and so on. And so that's quite interesting because there is many networks. In fact, we have networks that can be on Wi-Fi if it's not really adapted, but we can imagine another way to have access to Wi-Fi on a hotel or public places, for example. So it could be interesting. We can also imagine to have it on other networks like Wirepass we have in the industry or things like this. So it's really creating opportunities. So that's quite interesting for us, I think.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting to get that point of view. We kind of get stuck into the one thing that we know about. Joey, I got what do you got? As we're the only Americans on here, how do we defend this thing, man?
Yeah, I mean, of course it's exciting for us. Like we've been sitting on this 5G hardware for months at this point, watching its lights be on and not really do a whole lot else. But yeah, so it'll be really exciting to see some of that stuff light up. Armand threw out that tweet the other day that said like there's a bunch of these like tier one cellular companies that are in technical trials with Helium. That's going to be really exciting from a data usage standpoint. Anyone that's holding Helium should be excited about data usage. That's kind of what Neil was touching on. Like DC burn is like the number one driver of this flywheel effect for us. And no faster will we see DC burn than on a mobile network. Like it's going to be like orders of magnitudes higher than what we've seen on LoRa. A bit to what Paul was talking about though. This opens up HIP 51 alone, so not looking at HIP 52 or 53, which are these specific sub-DAOs. HIP 51 opens up this opportunity for us to start thinking about Wi-Fi offload globally. Like that's a standard that you can just go buy some hardware and sort of set it up. And then it's about sort of building the pipes, if you will, so that telco operators and all of that can start offloading their data into it. The way these systems work isn't quite like Wi-Fi. Like when you like connect your computer to it, often these are basically invisible networks that the telco sort of programs into your phone, and it just sort of does it invisibly in the background. So it's really no different than like cell coverage in that regard. So that's a really exciting opportunity. The best way to think about HIP, like us moving into this mobile token and IoT token, like the mobile token is just going to become a telco. Like we will be one of the largest data offload providers globally, probably very quickly. I don't know. Don't quote me on that because who knows?
No, Dave's already making the memes.
The memes are coming.
Geez, I could see the gears turning.
It's in the can. Come on, we've heard this. Cool.
Anyway, it's super exciting times just because like we've already got the world's largest like IoT network. That this HIP is not going to devalue that network. Like it is still growing, and it is still like we've talked about the flatlines and some concerns of people turning off hotspots and all that. But like we could have 2/3 of like the hotspots just go offline. We would still have the world's largest IoT network, and it would still be like incredibly robust. Obviously, I hope that doesn't happen. People should hopefully sort of set a long-term vision for where this is going. But yeah, exciting times all around. I'll be happy to see a little more stability on the proof of coverage stuff, just to see folks a little happier there. And then, flywheel effects need to go in to all of this just to make the deployment and upkeep of hotspots like continually maintainable. But that's my thoughts.
Love it, dog. Love it. And I guess you got a hike to go on with the girl, and Dennis is going to come in and give us some 5G wisdom. That's my understanding. So, thanks for coming on, Joe.
Have a good one, y'all.
See you, Jerry.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
Just a couple of points on the European thing as well is you have to remember that Nova have just been funded by Liberty Global and Nokia, who both own 5G spectrum in the EU. So there could be possibly something down the line. I mean, the other thing to remember is those are the people that do all the lobbying. So they wanted to change the rules to get more profit for their network. They will, So it might be a later thing, but give it time.
Yeah, love it. Dennis,
how's everybody?
Good, dog. Psyched to hear about this 5G business.
Right, man. And then I was listening to Joey, and he knocked it out of the park. It was like, man, a lot of stuff that I wanted to say, he kind of like hit it right on the head.
Fucking stole your thunder.
Right.
There goes. I already blew this no cursing business. Oh man, it just doesn't work. Cool. So Dennis, you've been on the kind of Gristle King YouTube before. We had a really long convo about 5G with you and Jeremy, and I think Travis were on that. But you and I have been kind of talking in the Discord, and I know you've been super active on Discord on both the 5G and the IoT side. So kind of from here, I want to hear what you're thinking, what is coming next for you, what you're worried about, what people should be psyched about, like anything, go.
So, all right, just a little bit about me. Up to about 3 months ago, I'll get to the why 3 months ago, but for 6 years now, I've been doing IoT. We mainly focused on solutions. So a company will come up to us and say, hey, this is a problem we have. How does someone with IoT make it, work? And I'm the guy that comes in and finds a solution for them. And that's what I've been doing for 6 years, up to about 3 months ago when I've sold the company to my business partner. The company's still going, but now instead of focusing on solving a problem for people during those 6 years, I found that, there's problems that no company has come up to us, right? And so we're trying to find a solution for them, like in a product. So we're creating a product. So we found niches that could use a product, and it's just because it is expensive for a company to come out and deploy an entire system. But if there's something out there and it kind of helps the company, people are gonna, and it's a lot cheaper because something's already built. They're more willing to start changing over. So I know that you and I we were going to talk about use cases and how people should start thinking about building out the network, because now we have this huge network, which when I first initially got into IoT, we thought that was going to be the hardest aspect. Yeah. But in reality, now it's actually the sensors that are becoming the issue, because we had the adaption of the network and it's there, but now everybody is like, oh, hold on, there's now devices that need to go on that network. And that one's we kind of thought at the time would be like a 1-to-1 for every hotspot that got put up, or gateway in this case, lower gateway. There would be like 10,000 sensors that went along with it, but it kind of went the other way around. 10,000 hotspots and one sensor that got put up. So,
and the sensors are difficult. I mean, for you and Paul and Neil, and probably for Dave, you guys have a background in it. But I think of myself as like a citizen technologist, so not an engineer, like trying to figure this stuff out. And it's really difficult to kind of go through all the steps. And the most difficult that I'm finding, and the thing that I have to get help on, that I haven't been able to do for myself, is to show people what the data looks like. So I can get the sensor connected to console. Like that's just kind of monkey steps. You just follow instruction and get that done. I can see the data coming through. So it's like, oh yeah, it's pinging at this signal strength. But to actually show and display that data in a useful way, I need help on that. And I think a lot of us are going to. Paul, I see you chomping at the bit.
Well, it's quite easy to get that if you use platform like DataCake or Tago.io. you can really have a quick access to the data. It's limited. I mean, you can have 5 dashboard on Tago.io and 5 devices. But if you want to make a prototype or a demo, it's really, really fast. And even if your device is doing LPP encoding, you don't need to create a function that is a bit complex and taking time in the console. You can directly get the decoded information into Tago.io, which is quite good.
Totally, Paul. So let me jump in there though. So on the prototyping side and getting 1 or 4 or maybe 10 sensors, which is the limit on the kind of standard Helium console, it's not a big deal, right? I've got like these temperature humidity sensors and I can see the temperature and humidity. But if I'm thinking about the next step of the network, which is the usage side, and I want to figure out how to use it and to resell it just as a businessman, that part is still beyond what I can do right now. So I'm having to partner with, Lake Street Software, and I talk to Nick Huff and say, okay, I've got these people counters. Can you build this thing? It's cool to see it happening, but it's still not a thing that is ultra easy.
And we're never going to see mass adoption until that's ready, right?
Yeah.
We need apps that just mean that I don't see we're going to have mass adoption until I can go to my neighbor and say, here's a tracker, use it, like I've done.
Yeah.
The same for soil moisture, the same for leak detection. I mean, we're talking with companies in the UK and they're desperate for leak detection because if they can prove that they're detecting this stuff, their insurance is lower.
Yeah.
Now, you think about how many businesses that can help, but to get them to do that, you need to be the middleman to do that for them at the moment.
Yeah.
What is interesting is that previously in the IoT domain, the problem you had is because what you are talking is basically a solution provider. In the IoT, you have hardware provider. So there are the guys that are providing the device you can find and you have to hack yourself to get the data. And the hardware provider business is quite easy. It's all business. You produce some hardware and you sell it with a margin. So it's easy and safe. The IoT solution business is more complicated because you have to support the running cost. You have to support the communication cost and you have to support the platform running cost. And that's a bit complex because people are not really ready to pay for a service on monthly basis or yearly basis. What is and that's why there is not a lot of IoT solution provider because the business model is really hard. What is interesting with Helium is that the connectivity cost is really low. And so it makes a change in this question. So you can provide 10 years or 5 or 10 years of service within your IoT solution basic price for a reasonable cost. And so I expect that the IoT solution provider will be more interested in developing something on Helium that has been on the different other IoT network we had previously with, there was something like €10 of communication per year, which means that for 5 years, you have €50 in your device price just for the connectivity. So it's the price people are ready to put on the device, basically. So you reach the limit. And that's why it's not really working.
100% agree. Yeah, because that's the hardest part. And I've actually met up with a couple people from Helium, and that they're all miners, and these guys have over 100 miners each, right? And they're like, okay, what's the next step? Yes. And then I explain to them, okay, hey, this is what you need to do. And then they come up to that solution and they're like, this is a little over my head. And it is for a lot of people. Yeah. And so, I totally agree that if you look at Google Home or Alexa, you can just use your phone, scan a couple things, or use Bluetooth to connect, and all of a sudden, poof, you talk to Alexa and it tells you the temperature of that sensor or something like that. Yeah. So that is the next step that I think Helium should, and I think people like Neil is a perfect example. He is, with TrackPack.
He's crushing, yeah.
And basically, it's gonna. What you say with Alexa is not incompatible. What I mean is, when you are developing an IoT solution, you can have the different API to go to Alexa or Google Home. And so basically the advantage is you get your sensor, which can be temperature, air quality, weather, whatever you want. and you just stick it on your wall, and it's connected to your Alexa. So you have no need to have a specific app, or you have no need to have a configuration. And that's what can be really interesting is compared to a Wi-Fi device, you need to connect to your Wi-Fi network with the setup is always a bit complicated. Here, it's going to be fully transparent, and you don't need to have a Wi-Fi network basically. So it means that this device can be connected to your Alexa, but can be installed at your grandma house, or can be installed inside your garage, or any place where you don't have your Wi-Fi coverage. So that's quite interesting that way.
Yeah. All right. So the IoT stuff, like as far as I'm seeing it, is that you got folks like, and Paul, you're doing something like this too, where you're making it easier for people to use console. Neil's making it super easy to use this track pack stuff. I've got one of these trackers that Neil has been walking me through. And I think it's important at this point to kind of put out that sometimes it's still difficult to do it, right? Neil's making it as easy as possible, but in this case, I don't know if I lost it or CalChip never sent it, but I don't have the app key for this thing. So it's like, I can't onboard it. So it's still like, we're still in kind of bumpy phase in IoT sensor land. It's not going to be.
Yeah, there needs to be a lot of standardization with this stuff to make it easier, like Paul's saying. So it can just be integrated into Alexa, or it can be integrated with all these systems. But the very fact that when you get sent a sensor, you have to check for an email, and that email might not arrive because they've forgotten to do it, is not how you get growth. So but every step of this, someone needs to develop it, and we can't expect Nova to do that. So we should be building these systems, and we can make money building these systems and developing them for people.
Yeah.
That's the key thing here.
What is important, in fact, is to completely hide the technology. So I'm also doing trackers since many years with Sigfox, and now with 𝗚𝗏𝗏 and Helium. And I mean, if I deliver a tracker, my customer don't care about the network. They just have an app. They connect to the app. They access
want to know
the
where
data.
their thing is. Yeah.
And eventually, the tracker changes the network if there is no Sigfox coverage. It jumps to Helium and the other side. So that's what we need to provide as a service for the user, to make sure that anyone can use it with no setup. No setup is the only setup that should be accepted for consumer at scale.
For sure. Dennis, since we got you on here, and we don't always get you on here, I want to go focus back on 5G a little bit. I know that you'd said Joey had said most of the stuff you wanted to tap into, but I just put up one of these 5G things. Bobcat is busy emailing me, telling me not to put it outside. I put it outside, or I put the LoRa thing outside. And then there's another piece where the Bobber 500, the power, whatever the thing is called, the power wall wart piece, it says that it's going to pull 60 watts, but if you measure it, it pulls 20 or less. And so I went through this whole thing of like, I'm going to buy this $200 PoE splitter that can inject 60 watts because normally they can't do it. And it turns out I didn't need to do any of that. You can just use a regular PoE injector splitter. Like, what are the things that you're seeing as because you've done these 5G installations professionally, that folks like me, that the citizen technologists, are going to continue to kind of run into as problems?
So that's going to be the biggest thing, because a lot of these, so I come from a telco background. You know, we're doing maintenance and installation of big commercial carrier grade radios, and a lot of these hardware, like the Bobcat or the Freedom Fi gateway, typically is inside in a air conditioned, area. So going, against it and being disruptive, like a disruptive technology that Helium is, we're going now starting to put these outside, where we're doing a little bit different than what is normal. But yeah, so one of the things that we are going to start running into is going to be, power limitations, and getting, away from, unfortunately, thinking of like, oh, hey, I have a solar kit that I can power my, little Raspberry Pi. So these units are pulling a little bit more, but I do believe that, the manufacturers should kind of build around, PoE as well too, because they have to understand that a lot of our builds, hey, can we get the roof rather than, hey, can we get room in your utility closet? Because a lot of people are still going to want to put up a LoRa antenna. Like a lot of my locations, so I have 10 to start with right now.
Yep.
And all 10 locations, I don't have LoRa antennas, because that means drilling through, two different sets of bricks, right, to go outside and then to the closest access to the roof,
That's the
where I
fun
can
part,
actually do
dude.
it.
Like, that's the only part I can do. So it's everything
Yeah.
else is difficult to understand. Okay, so you're just saying, and if correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like all of the units come with both the LoRa and what I would think of as like the 5G guts in one box, and then the 5G radio is in another box. And
Correct.
I think that is what is kind of causing. That's what caused my confusion. Was just like, well, it's a LoRa, so I'm going to put it outside and have a short, thick cable, and I'm going to connect it and like do an awesome job. And then when I was talking to the Bobcat's chief, whatever 5G engineer, he's like, he didn't say this. He's very polite, but he basically said, "You are an idiot. You need to do it a different way." And
Yeah,
I think he's right, but it's just we're gonna have to get used to it.
Yeah, so unfortunately, like I was saying, yeah, it's two worlds and two different ways of install. Like LoRa with, a lot of my units are outside too in a little box and just a really short cable, so I can get the most, out of my POC.
Yep.
But when it comes to 5G, yeah, it's technically a separate box that does the actual POC versus, like you said, the main guts. So, because the main guts, all it is just a little computer that runs the software um, to talk to Helium, to talk to the back end servers. That's pretty much all it does.
Okay. Huh. Yeah. No, I
So
think if I do it again, I'll do it differently. I don't think I'll do it again because I love putting stuff up on roofs, but it was just. Yeah, I don't know. There's something where it's like, okay, where it's that weakness where you're strong at something, so you do it, even if it's the wrong thing to do. I think putting the Bobber 500 inside is probably. I'll get away with it because I'm in San Diego and we don't have bad weather, but most people, I don't think they will.
I'd argue with that.
Come on, dude. You're right here for like the 3 days a year. It was no good, and even then, it was still nice. Just
It was still nice. Yeah.
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 Dennis, what else have you seen on the 5G side? Because I think the timeline is what I'd love to hear from you from. Like, am I going to start earning off my 5G next month? Because everybody wants that.
Yes and no. POC is coming. Of course, 51 has to pass, and the DAOs kind of need to start rolling. And according to Armon, his prediction is there's enough meat in the code that phase one of HIP 51 will technically airdrop POC rewards for miners and radio owners. But it's how can I put it? It's not exactly what we were hoping for. It's like for someone like myself, that's been waiting 14 months.
Yep.
I wish that we start moving the data, because I coming from someone that has use cases for this stuff. You can't really you can't sell POC to, hey, yeah, you want this radio set up in your building? Hey,
I'm gonna make money. You're not. This is gonna be great. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so who's my customer? Who can connect to this radio? No one yet. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It's just not a sell for me. So yeah, like the timeline that I'm hoping for is around September, November. Helium is switching over and allowing more of a private network. Still no rewards, but I can then sell. Hey, look, I know you have point of sale counter, an area. And I can run that off of 5G if I wanted to. And there's no, because I'm running a private network, there's no charge, right, for the customer. Right. But a lot of these guys have like iPads that support CBRS, so it's more secure, stronger, faster than, like, more robust, I should say, than Wi-Fi is. But so these things can connect and disconnect really quickly, and it gives the store owner, or the host, I should say, an actual use case.
Right.
So they get off.
But that's only going to be useful in larger stores. Like, we've got a 700 square foot store. The Wi-Fi access point is maybe 12 feet from the iPad. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think there's going to be a huge difference between running that iPad on Wi-Fi or 5G.
Correct. So yeah, in this case, the store has 53 of them, It's a big store.
So,
And
someone playing on a different level. Okay.
correct, yeah. So these guys are multi-level building, and,
Yep.
and you can put a radio in each one.
Yep.
They have like on a weekend they got 1,500 people coming in. So we're hoping that these are being used for an actual use case, not just POC.
Totally.
Yeah. If you go back to POC, what's the range of these 5G units, and how many of them are there? Are you likely to get any coverage at the moment with the numbers that are around?
If you're in a city like Los Angeles, maybe 0.5% of LA is covered. Same with like San Francisco. Same goes with Poland. It's just these radios are not as strong as carrier radios. I've made a diagram in the 5G room where it was showing like if we were to power a light bulb, like our radios are probably, I think this is 250 milliamps, right? If I'm not mistaken, a AAA battery. It's pretty much the same power that our radios put out as this. So they're not as powerful as like carrier radios where you're looking at 75 watts. So, we're looking at quite a lot. I do think that Helium will get there, but like Joey and Nick were talking about, I've had this unit here even before it. I was even like fully sent out, and this is a test unit that I have. Freedom 5. Sorry, I'm pointing to my Freedom 5 off camera. It's been sitting there 9 months doing nothing outside of moving my test phone that I use for watching Netflix outside at the pool. So literally outside my window right here is the pool. Yeah. So I have the unit pointed through the window, and I'm sitting by the pool using because this has no service outside of Freedom Fi.
Yep.
That's all I've been using it for. So I'd like to actually kind of start seeing something.
Totally. I mean, this goes back to kind of where we are with Helium. Is we're still super, super early. Right, is that we've been, the 5 of us on this call have all been in Helium long enough to kind of think of ourselves. I'm not want to speak for you. Think of myself as like, I'm like a Helium veteran, but really, I don't know what I'm doing, and B, I haven't been in this space that long, and C, the project is still super young. Right, they can claim that they started in 2013, but they really started building out the project in like late 2019 was the very beginning of it. We're not anywhere near where it needs to be in order for it to be like this mature, reliable, badass technology. And so I'm seeing a ton of the questions in the comments are really strategically answered by that, in that you're super early to this space. This is not yet a reliable kind of Amazon level service thing. That's not where it is. And if you like being early, then you are in the right place. And if you don't mind dealing with kind of bumps in the road and figuring things out and being that like frustrated citizen technologist that I've been for the last year, this is a great place to be. If you want something that works all the time without you thinking about it, you should find another, something else.
What is interesting, if you look at the internet, the rise of internet, basically, Google has been created maybe something in 1993 or something like this, or 1995. But the first time we all used Google was in 20 something. So what I mean is it takes time to create a disruption and to create something new. And as you say, we are just at the beginning. 1 year before, there was about 20K getaways around the world, and now we are close to 1 million. So it is progressing really, really far, but very quickly. But there is a lot of questions still open and a lot of steps for sure.
Yeah, I'm seeing someone give us a thumbs down. So GFY. I'll keep my my language semi.
What does that mean, Nick?
Yeah, I'll tell you in a second. Hey, I'll do a little bit of a shift here. Is that this world of what I think of as like blockchain and meatspace that Helium has led the way on and has said, hey, here's how you take a blockchain and you connect it to the real world and you add value and deliver utility and all that stuff. This world is and specifically in the wireless area, is blowing up. Dennis mentioned this thing Pollen, so pollen.io, I think it is another 5G like fast follower on Helium. There's all these projects out there, and one of them I just put up, Friday, this Geodnet. Have you guys? They build themselves as a space weather station. So it's basically you put this antenna on the same pole that you're putting your Helium antenna on. It receives signals from the satellites that are floating over us or flying over us. And then by receiving those signals and acting as a reference station, it makes GPS signals way more accurate. So normal GPS is like 2 to 3 meters. Having one of these things apparently makes it accurate down to like 1 centimeter. And I think it's
basically DGPS, what is currently done in agricultural environment, for example.
Yeah. So it's connecting that to this blockchain thing. And I think this is kind of one of the exciting pieces for those of us in Helium who have seen like what happens when you find something early and you explore it and you grow with it, is start looking for these other projects that are doing the same kind of thing. And Helium is going to do a lot of them. Helium is going to do Wi-Fi. Helium is going to do 5G. Helium is going to do all the things that you guys, I'm sure, know more than I do about. But there's also going to be these other companies out there that this whole world of blockchain and meatspace, specifically in wireless, but in other worlds as well, it's a pretty exciting time to be connected to this space.
Yeah, but a particular point on Geodnet, I don't know if you read, take a look. I've tried to understand exactly what they do. And the PowerPoint is just incredible. They are talking about cows and carrots and and cars and I don't know, but everything and nothing in the same time. So apparently what they do is a GPS. But the way they present it is really making me afraid of what they want to do for real. But if they were communicating only on GPS stuff, it could be, my point of view, interesting. There is application for this, even if I think that the challenge is so high that we're going to have some classical services for this, because for autonomous vehicle it makes sense. For many things it really makes sense to have this kind of GPS precision. But the way the project is presented is a bit frightening. That's
it's great for me because they don't know how to explain stuff. So it's like, well, great. I can see where I'm going to come in because I can just smart enough to like figure out what they're saying, and then regular enough to explain it to folks. So it's just another cool project in the world, and I think they're eventually going to connect to Helium and do something with positioning, but kind of set that aside. Let's see, Neil, you got anything? You've been unusually quiet this time. What's going on in that big brain of yours?
No, I've just been reading through comments and just seeing what people are talking about. There's some great projects on Helium coming as well, like 𝗪𝗪𝗀, and that's the other thing to note as well, and that they all use data over Helium, so it's good fun projects to look into. Definitely worth keeping your eye out for them. But.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk, because this isn't an official Helium forum and we can talk price. What are you guys thinking about price in general? And I'm assuming you are not day traders of Helium, that we're all kind of enthusiasts. So there's like that fan side.
Hey, my first thought of this week on video was last week, weren't you saying that you're buying Helium? So right now you're doing very well from buying it. That's exactly what you do. That's what you should be doing. Buy low, sell high,
Yeah.
No, you can't generally normally talk about it.
No, I think I missed the very bottom because I saw it go down to 6, and just like a typical newbie trader, it's like, well, if it's going down, it's going to keep going down. I'm going to miss it, or like I'm going to lose money. And it turns out that I should have just bought when it was under $7 here, and now it's up at what this morning is 8 or 9.
No,
exactly.
It's gone up 20% today.
Yeah, it's jacking up. What do you guys, if you pay attention at all, what do you guys think will happen with it? Do you think it's going to kind of decouple in price from the crypto market, or do you think it's going to stay in the same general place?
Not until we ban a lot of DC. This is all speculation. You have to remember there is no utility price here. This is all speculation. So until we hit that ban to mean equilibrium, we will never break away from the Bitcoin price. So we have a utility here, and we have to pump DC. Otherwise, we won't break away.
That's why the 5G stuff is so important, because there's going to be so much DC use in that. So even if that hurts the euros, that's good
exactly.
for the network.
Exactly, and if
Yeah,
Bitcoin crashes, we're still going to pump the same amount of data. We're still going to have the same usage, and we won't. So that's the most important thing we can do. So anything that gets DC going, we need to improve it and get it going fast.
But
Yeah.
something that we Joey did touch on, and it kind of does add to the 5G thing. If you guys see on Helium Discord, there's like a they call it like a fish tank coding thing. If you guys check out the 5G room, they are talking about Wi-Fi, and they are talking that there is mobile carriers already, international mobile carriers that are already talking to Helium about doing Wi-Fi. So like, yes, CBRS is US only. We, might get 250,000 hotspots or like radios deployed, but I think we can see a million, what's it called, Wi-Fi access points throughout the US. I mean, throughout the world, because unlike LoRa, Wi-Fi is pretty much everywhere. There's no 868.915. There's none of that, right? It's Wi-Fi, and it's open throughout the world. So I see Wi-Fi being far, far bigger than CBRS will ever be. And I think, like Neil was saying, I think at that point, our BME is just, that's when, again, speculation, but, to the moon and everybody jump on the rocket.
Yep.
Exactly. It's us that need to drive that usage. You just can't expect it to turn up. We need to be out there looking at the use cases and building these systems.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you've got TrackPack. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
No, so Wi-Fi, it's interesting. Currently, there's no big Wi-Fi deployment outdoor. So we could imagine to have this. I mean, we have the points. We have we have the rooftop to deploy it now, and we have a high density inside city, so we could have a good coverage. But what's going to be a big challenge is that Wi-Fi, you don't have a lot of channels. You had a lot of collision, and and so it's interesting to see how we can deal with that, route the packet to the right hotspot, and so on. Because Wi-Fi has not been made for creating a network. I mean, Wi-Fi has been made to have it's a layer 2. So there is some other challenge, not just deploying the network itself. And there is another challenge that has been noticed in the comments, which is interesting, and maybe your point of view could be interesting on this. It's about the risks risk you have from the law if you are transferring over for 5G or over Wi-Fi network some malicious content or forbidden content, because at the end it's your IP that's going to be published on internet. So it's your network access you are sharing, and so we have to be able to differentiate the traffic to prove that we are not the source of this. So that's a good question, I think. If you have any comment on this, makes sense.
So we actually can go back to talking about the brains of the thing. All that, as soon as it gets sent over to carrier, it's not your problem anymore. So it is your data, but it's VPN'd through your carrier. So the carrier, if you're doing anything illegal off of it, your carrier's eyes wide open. Hey, what are you doing? Like, so yeah, it's. I agree with you on the channels. I agree with you on all that, and I think in comparison to CBRS, Wi-Fi is not as robust. But the cool part is it's not going to be your actual IP that is visible. So it is still sent over through the carriers, and that's what that FreedomFi gateway will never be able to get rid of that, because that's what the brain does. Is it'll take the packet, send it through the entire core of Helium to the server of T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, and then that does all the communications between, all encrypted. There's absolutely now Wi-Fi, man in the middle attacks are going to be a lot easier compared to like a CBRS man in the middle. But yeah, it is going to be encrypted and it is going to be safe. So yeah, if someone does something illicit on your network, that person's carrier is going to be the one that's going to be aware of it. So there's now on a private network, like this phone that I was showing you guys earlier that has a private network SIM card, or like if I was going back to my use case, that one big building, they have the POSs. If someone wanted to use that POS to do something illicit, then it's on my thing because it doesn't go through the Helium network. The radio just acts like a access point. So there's no proxying over to a carrier. The carrier itself is not offering me an IP. There's none of that. It's all my internet access point, phone, device, or whatever. So yeah, at that point, if someone wants to do something illicit on your network, then yeah, your IP is visible.
So I'm trying to keep up with understanding that. Does that mean that if I'm running this 5G at the shop, at the Paley Treat shop, if I'm understanding, there's 2 points here. There's a point where like some jackwagon is sitting outside, whatever, selling cocaine, right? And that goes through my network because it's on my Wi-Fi. That's kind of their problem. But the question I have, and I'm not totally clear on, is if Cox Internet sees that like, oh, this guy's using gigabytes and gigabytes of data and he's processing all this stuff, is that going to come down on me and they're going to say like, hey, you're basically reselling that data and you can't do that according to the SLA? Or am I missing some part of that?
So no, what I was getting to is it's pretty much the way that the network works, and this works even with telecoms, right? Like Big Neutral Host, America's Tower, Crown Castle. There's a device, a baseband unit, right, that connects to the radios and to a core. So Verizon software, T-Mobile software, all that stuff, and connects to their thing, right? So whenever a radio or device connects to the radio, it then says, okay, this is the SIM card, right? They have a dashboard, and this is kind of breaking down how Helium works as well. If you see at the top, it says like there's a chart, and it says in HIP 53 says subscriber, and then it says service provider. The service provider pretty much has a database of every SIM card, right? If it's T-Mobile's, it goes to T-Mobile's because it's just like a password. Oh, hey, okay, this is T-Mobile's. Let me now route this phone to T-Mobile. T-Mobile then handles everything. So like a VPN, right? So that data is then sent through T-Mobile's, and it's pretty much VPN back and forth encrypted. And your IP, your ISP technically doesn't see that.
But they're still
right?
going to see like the amount of data coming through, right?
Correct. So that part is technically a TOS, but right now, for the time being, I don't think we're going to see enough data to where it's going to raise an eyebrow.
Okay.
Yeah, really, in reality, you should be putting these on business lines, not home lines where they're going to limit the connection after using so many gigabytes. You should be putting them on plans that you have the service rights in terms of service to actually do that kind of transfer. So business lines are normally 1-to-1 of what you buy rather than a commercial line, which is whatever they can sell you, and then you can do however many's on the network. But with a business line, you'll buy like 100 meg. That'll be 100 meg up, 100 meg down, and that's what you're allowed to do whatever you want with it. Use the full service.
Oh, interesting. So maybe I just got lucky and put it on the business line, like totally by accident, not thinking about it. Okay, cool. Great. Ripping fellas. Well, a couple minutes left. Any other, it seems like, there's a ton of questions on the Helium network and light hotspots, which I think we can just say, hey, just be patient, wait. That's the answer there. There's a ton of questions on 5G and what's going to happen that are mostly focused on the US, but also have global implications. And then there's a ton of questions on the sensor stuff. Like we could probably do a 4-hour show and not satisfy at all. So I'll end up with a general shout out or a general kind of pitch to you guys. If you're watching this and you want to get in on a group exploring sensors, is go ahead and join the Gristle crew. We talk about this stuff actually tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Dennis is going to come on that show as well, and we'll go more in depth on this stuff. But if you want to be around people, like the free way to do it is get on the Helium Discord, talk to all these guys. All of these guys that you're watching on the show are all on Discord, and all, as far as I know, giving away tons of great, really high quality information. If you want to be part of a small group and pay $50 a month and come in and see kind of what's going on and have focused efforts, join the Gristle crew. And then the rest of it is, all these guys also have other services, so you can see disc91.com. Dennis has got his own thing. Dave's got heliumanalytics.io, and Neil's got trackpack.io. Like, go ahead and support them as much as you can. Check them out, see what they're doing. and make it so that we can kind of keep doing these cool shows and not worry about charging for like an hour, bring on sponsors or whatever. Yeah. Anything
how many
on top
DC
of that, that's my pitch.
Yeah, how many DC do I need to burn to cover my 1.33 gigabytes that I've used during this call?
A fair
quite a
amount.
bit, but yeah. But see, that's the thing.
55,000, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, but that, like, see, the thing with Helium, that's the cool part is because that right there with Wi-Fi or with 5G on Helium was what, 65 cents, 75 cents.
Yeah.
So like, wholesale cost to, I have a friend who when Helium 5G first was announced, I told him, I was like, hey, look, I know your guys' company uses IoT and they move a lot of data through Verizon. Their last bill to Verizon last year was hundreds of millions of dollars. Big company. And I told them about Helium 5G and I told them 50 cents and their jaws just kind of went, what? Like 50 cents a gigabyte is really unheard of. Yeah, there's plans like residential plans or consumer plans. Let me rephrase that. That is, equals up to 50 cents a gigabyte. But like Neil was saying, that's a consumer brand, call, right? Where we're talking about businesses that are paying $8 a gigabyte for, a network. And, when you're moving $100 million worth of data, if you go over from $8 a gig to even, let's say, on a secondary company, right, that's moving, let's say there's a middleman, right, and one of you, the Gristle crew, becomes a middleman, right, and creates Helium and creates their own MVNO. They can charge $2. They're paying Helium 50 cents, and they're making $1.50. So, that company right there, if their bill was $200 million, they're now paying maybe $50 million, right?
Yeah.
A year on their data, but
that's a fair amount of savings. I'm no mathematician.
Yeah. We have a response to your question, Dave. If we look at the 𝗵53, the price for 1 gigabyte on mobile is $0.5. So basically, you had to pay something like 1.6. Well, I'm sorry, 1. I made a mistake. Under a dollar for your communication. It's 0.7 or something like this.
And that's so cheap to speak to you guys.
Yeah, that's less than a cup of coffee.
Yeah, as I said, my hourly rate's usually higher, but there you go.
Significantly, yeah. Cool. Well, thanks a ton to everyone for coming on today. Dennis, is there anywhere people that you want to direct them, or just should they find you on Discord?
Find me on Discord. I'm always open to talk to people.
Yep.
If anybody has any questions to get into it, into figuring out how sensors or use cases or anything like that, I'm more than happy to talk to them. I have 6 years of experience and I need this network to be here for the next 20, 30 years. So if I can help people get on the network and use cases, I'm here. Ask me a question.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to help. I actually wrote down for our next interview is like a bunch of use cases that anybody can get into. And then thing is, like, a lot of people need to start thinking out of the box.
Yeah.
Rather than going directly to a company, go to a side company that is willing to save money by looking like a hero company because of a sensor that they are paying you to carry the data.
Super exciting stuff. Yeah. Whenever I see people like, oh, HOT is dying, or like my hotspot's not working, it's like, dude, you're just missing the point. Like you're stuck 8 months ago. And if you can look 8 months or 8 years or 2 months forward, you can see like there is an opportunity to crush and change your life. And it's just going to take some work. So pretty rad to share some time with you guys and share that perspective. So thank you guys.
Pleasure.
Cool. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
See you guys next week.
See you later.
Late.